you could just make yourself a name tag, that would be great.
I want to welcome everybody here. My name is Cliff Heimwitz, and I'm the chairperson of the Suffolk Disability, Brookhaven Disability Task Force. Marlene is the chair, and we're very lucky to have Councilman Gercio here tonight. He's actually a liaison to the Disability Task Force, and we're very fortunate to have him because he comes from the education field, and he really acknowledges that his community is culturally diverse, and that there are people out there that can use assistance. So having him as our liaison is a tremendous benefit. And Vicki, his chief of staff, is fabulous to work with, and she's the kind of person that gets it too. So we're really fortunate that of all people that he's our liaison.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that.
And anything that we can do to help everyone around here, please, you have my card, just give us a call, and happy to do it.
And so also, if it, I don't know if you
Yep,
signed
I have
here.
it. Yep.
Oh, okay. All right, then Diane, this is Diane Ripple. She's going to be doing a presentation. We're very fortunate to have her here. So
Here we
I'll
go.
stop talking.
I'm very excited to be here. So my name is Diane Ripple, and I started my career in education a really long time ago as a speech therapist. Thought that I would just do that my entire career, and I loved it. I worked from preschool to adults, inclusive and non-inclusive. And then, quite honestly, when I had my second son, who is now 21, I decided at that point that I didn't want to work full time, and thought that since I was such a so immersed in inclusion, and that was really my passion, that I would do some consulting around inclusion on Long Island. And so I did. I started doing that just a little bit, and then discovered that I loved it. And in 1999, I opened the doors to my company, which is Consulting That Makes a Difference. And currently, my company this year is in 35 school districts. I have 4 other amazing people that work for my company, and a great office person that keeps me organized and everything together. And so I love it. I love my job every day. It takes me from one end of the island, I was saying from Shelter Island to Malvern, and everywhere in between. Today I was in Huntington, and then had a meeting in Lynbrook, and now I'm here tonight. And I love it. I just really enjoy it. So the way my days are spent are doing what I call ongoing coaching, which is going into schools and supporting teachers, administrators, teacher assistants, teacher aides on how to support students with disabilities, a wide range of abilities and disabilities, how to support them in more inclusive settings. So on my caseload this year, I have 26 students along with Down syndrome. I have students, other students on the autism spectrum, and then students who have learning disabilities. I would say at this point, probably about 50% of my company is about co-teaching, and we do differentiated instruction, and we run workshops for districts. So that's me. I'd love to hear, since we have a small group of people, could just go around and just introduce themselves. That would be great.
I guess I'll go first.
Sure.
So my name's Jamie. I don't know.
Oh, just what you're here, what you do.
I have 2 children. My daughter's 7, my son's 10. Both of them have disabilities, 2 different disabilities. So I work with my school district. I used to say it's a fight with them, but now I work with them. We're all on the same team. It took about 6 years to get that way, but they're doing good. Yeah, so I mean, I feel bad for my son in one aspect because he's my first child, so I kind of learned through him. And at least with my daughter, I have a little bit of a head start with her, which is good. I work in mental health. I do mental health counseling. I've worked in various different agencies doing different things. I work at CPS. So yeah.
Great, glad you're here.
You
Thanks.
found that on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I belong to the town of Brookhaven, like webpage, so it was on it.
Well, welcome.
I'm a mom of 2 kids. My son had speech delay, went to general kindergarten, and we're struggling with the district to get services. And my cousin, who's a teacher, had seen the flyer and sent it to me, and she said, this might be helpful when you go to your meeting. And we do have our meeting with the district tomorrow, so I figured I'd come and see what this is about.
Good timing.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Zanarelli. I am a former special education reading specialist from West Islip, I guess for over 40 years or whatever. My son is not a child. He's an adult, he's 54. However, I started with him before there were laws or just as they were about to change and nobody knew anything. I've always been interested in special education, special students, and how to improve things at the schools. But now I go in and sub, and I see things a whole lot differently than I did before. And it's just an interesting area for me, even though I don't have any young children anymore. You never know who you come across, when that phone is going to ring, and you need to recommend someone to someone else, or just a suggestion, that kind of thing.
Great, nice to have you.
I'm Jody Daniels. I'm one of the task force members for the town. I'm also a parent of 2 children that are on the spectrum. They're teenagers. One in high school, one going into high school very soon. I'm part of my district SEPTA, and I work for an organization that runs programs for people, develop people with autism and developmental disabilities, but we're inclusive. So kind of a little bit of everything.
Great, glad you're here.
I'm Marlene, I'm the chair of the task force, and I have 2 sons. Frankie's autistic, and Tommy, the youngest one, has a speech delay. So obviously always trying to learn different ways to help him and educate people on strategies to include.
Hi, I'm Jennifer, and I have 2 children. They are 9 and 7, and my son was finally diagnosed with Asperger's 2 years ago. We had him in Catholic school. It wasn't a good fit, so we switched him to Pat Med, and the principal switched him last year, mid-year. Perfect, it went great, his inclusion, and then she's like, yeah, no, he can be in mainstream and he's fine. And now we're all over the place again, so I'm just trying to find my way in this, because I've not even been in the public school system, I've been in the private school system, so I'm just trying to, and I found out from my husband who works for the town, and SEPTA, actually, my SEPTA, Pat Med SEPTA.
Glad you're here. So you want to introduce yourself, anything about yourself we don't know?
Victoria Malloy, Legislative Aide, Chief of Staff to Councilman Lagarcio. We work very closely. Well, you can talk about that. I'll let you talk about that.
As Vicki said, Michael Lagarcio, I'm the councilman for the 4th Council District in the town of Brookhaven. And when my son entered elementary school, I guess it was in kindergarten, 1st grade, he needed speech therapy. And he went there for a couple of years, which was given to him by the Longwood School District, and they were very successful. And it kind of piqued my interest, the success that the school district had in helping him. And it wasn't that difficult, but they helped him out. And I became interested in special education. And then I was elected to school board in 2004, and I was on the school board for 12 years. I served 4 years as president and 3 years as vice president. But I became, when I was elected, the liaison to special education. And I learned a tremendous amount about students with disabilities. And I worked with SEPTA and some of the other organizations to do whatever we could to make sure that we classified as many children that needed the services and made sure that the students received the services that they so deserved. So I was very proud to see the success stories. I do therapy sometimes. The success stories that came out of Longwood, and one of the things that truly touched my heart, and it literally brought tears to my eyes, is when I saw children that I knew from kindergarten and 1st grade who went to school with my kids, and then as a Board of Ed member was able to hand them a diploma at the end of the year. It still gets very emotional for me. You give these kids a hug and you just say, wow, I'm so proud of you. That you struggled and you fought the challenges that you had, and here you are, graduating. So it was really nice, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Great, glad you're here too. And so if you thought you were going to just come and sit and just listen, that's not going to happen. I don't really run workshops like that, so I really run workshops not only hopefully they're engaging for everyone, but you'll get to know the people in the room, as well as those of you who are educators or in that field or interested to learn some different activities and things that you can bring back that will engage everybody. So this is in your packet, so if you could write your name on your packet, that would be great. So as you move around, that way it doesn't get lost. So just put your name on the front any way you'd like. My contact information, everything is on the front. And then if you like to take notes or you like a to-do list, the next page is there for you. So this presentation was designed for varying abilities and disabilities, so if we do any activities and for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, and you need any sort of accommodation or a modification or anything, just speak to me and I'm sure we can come up with something or we can get involved. So the first activity we're going to do is called Topic Toss-Up, just to start talking about inclusion and what it means to you and your experience. And so the way that it's going to work, the next slide has a few prompts. And as prompts come up, if you would like to respond to the prompt, there's no right or wrong answer to these. This is just gut level, your feelings about them. Just raise your hand and I will gently toss this lovely ball to you. Just watch your coffee so that nothing gets knocked over. And there's 5 prompts. So here's the first one. Inclusion can be most successful when? Who has something to say? Would be willing to say? You ready?
Yeah, let's try it.
Ah, there we go.
I think when everyone's on board, both parents and teachers and the children.
Great, you can hold on to that and toss it to somebody who wants to answer the next one. Something that makes a person feel included is, who has something to say about that? You can toss it right next to me.
I think for me, this kind of, I guess, hits home with my son is, I mean, he was like, I guess, 8 or 9. Like, I have him go to the CSE meeting. Like, when I go, my school district really wasn't keen on that. I basically told him you shouldn't be saying anything in the meeting that you shouldn't be hearing. And in a sense, I'm not going to be there forever, so I like to teach him to advocate for himself. And I feel that he's pretty good at it.
Great. Nothing wrong with starting early, that's for sure. I think inclusion benefits everyone because.
I have a thought.
All right, get your coffee then. So I was going to say, don't knock that over.
Because it helps us understand other people's point of views and think outside the box.
Thanks. Next one, I have seen evidence of inclusion when. Anybody have a
Click.
inclusion story, an inclusion moment they can share with us? There you go.
I guess generally when no one's denied access to a program or an activity. So everybody's encouraged to participate.
Great, and the last one, something about inclusion that excites me is. Let's clear about that. All right, here we go. Wow, nice job.
I've got a question.
Something about inclusion that excites me is.
It causes, it helps everyone to participate and feel like they are included.
That's great.
Absolutely. So the next thing that you're going to do is go on a museum walk. This is the way it's going to work. If you turn to the next page in your packet, you should have something that looks like this, a museum walk graphic organizer. For this, you need to bring your packet and something to write with, and I actually hung them up in the hallway there. There are 6 laminated cards. Those are your exhibits, and they match the pictures that are on there. So you can go to, just like a museum, you can go to any exhibit you want. To get to any exhibit and it's too crowded, there's a couple of people, just move to another one and come back to it later. There's 6 of them. And you're to bring it with you and then any response that you have. So I just have 2 prompts up there. You don't need to fill out everything. This is just so that you have something to share after so you can remember what your feelings were about it. So there are 6 exhibits. It says, this makes me think, this makes me question. So you can stand up now. I'll take you outside in the hallway, bring something to write with. You didn't realize we were making him work so hard. So there are 6 exhibits. So there's 3 on this wall. They're all laminated cards. 1, 2, 3. And then on this wall, 1 is right here and then 2 more there. So I'll give you roughly about 2 minutes per exhibit. And when you're done with all of them, just come back and sit back down and I'll know that you're finished. Already. So go pair up with somebody that you do not know and compare your graphic organizer, the ones that really spoke to you, right, read to each other what you had to say about it, and then we're gonna go together as a group. It's like, oh man, I gotta get it. So just switch yourselves
I
out.
just did my master's in education a couple years ago,
If we can just have two meetings, they can't be together, so if we can just switch yourselves up. Sorry about that.
We need a friend.
You know each other?
So if you feel like here,
Yeah.
Do you know
I'll
her?
come over there.
You know, we like.
Get him. We're not speaking.
You can go grab a pen.
Thank you.
So Laurie, so she's just going to join in with you? So if you could just explain to her what you just did out there and get her on the right page, that would be great. And you could just make something.
So we just went around and read some of these sheets that were on that part of this. Yeah. And then we just kind of go over what it made you think and then what it makes you question. So it's all like, and it's so inclusive environment. It was things that she was like, put up, I guess. Yeah, she put them up right in the whole, when you came in, you felt very
How's it working out? Yeah, that's what y'all
Oh, yeah.
Jeez, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so,
So take about 1 more minute, and then we're going to talk together as a whole group.
Yeah, exactly. I met this actually. They had the live amplifier.
he met Benji too.
I represent. I set up the thing with all town.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Good job.
Okay. So we're going to come back together as a whole group. Laurie, you just joined us. So everybody, this is Laurie. This is everybody else. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us why you're here, that would be great.
My name is Laurie Driscoll. I have a daughter who is 9 years old, almost 10, who is autistic. I'm also a teacher of 18 years, not special ed certified at all, but having a daughter with needs has completely changed my world. And to be honest with you, when I first started teaching and I wasn't married and whatever, the parents would come and sit with me and I would look at these parents and go like, I'm never going to be that mom. Well, I'm that mom now. And she's my world. And so she's currently in an inclusion class, but it's intrigued me so much. And like I'm sorry, I forgot your first name.
Jody.
What I just overheard Jody saying was, my daughter's in an inclusion class, but unfortunately what a big piece of the problem is, these teachers don't know how to modify or haven't been trained, no fault to their own, haven't been trained appropriately You just take two teachers, stick them together and say, make it work. And you have all these children with all these needs all across the board, and it's difficult for everybody.
Can I ask you what district you're in?
I teach in Middle Country. My daughter goes to East Forest South Manor.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, thank you so much. I'm glad you joined us, and
Thanks for
that's
having
really what this workshop will be about.
Stop.
We're actually going to spend the latter half of it about making modifications and talking about that. So hopefully that'll be something you can bring back.
Great.
So this exhibit here, did anyone have anything or hear something from somebody else that they want to share about partial participation?
I'll
Yes.
go.
Thank you.
So, obviously, my particular school district, I won't say, I haven't been 100% a fan of them.
Right.
However, this year, my son's in 4th grade, and he has, like, phenomenal teachers. He's in integrated co-teaching. And my son, he's very smart, but he has some, like, reading disability, dyslexia, and that type of thing. So it makes his learning that much harder for him. His teacher's really, like, thinking outside the box. So she basically does a lot of research on her own. She brings it into the classroom. She has a lot of communication with me, email, text, that type of stuff. Essentially to kind of help him because she's learning through him as well. Like this is her first student that's had dyslexia. So I mean, I like her a lot in the fact that she's been doing those type of things, and because he is very smart, they modify his work so he gets harder work but less of it because he has an attention issue. Yeah. So I think that's phenomenal.
Great. And for me, as a consultant, this is really like, this is what makes it work. You know, it's really getting people to really embrace this concept of partial participation, which is not for me. It's by an amazing man named Lou Brown, who is a huge inclusion person from the University of Wisconsin. And I was fortunate he came to PatMed probably close to like 8 or 9 years ago to speak at night, and I snuck in there and got to see him in person. And if you read anything by him, he's brilliant. But really what he says is that if you follow these 4 pieces, these 4 principles, that it's possible to make any activity, any lesson, any life event meaningful for any person. And so whenever people are struggling with doing that, I always refer back to this, and I've had teachers that I've worked with who finally did embrace it, and it took a while, and they made huge banners that said partial participation, because it's really important to just keep that there's meaningful things in every activity, and even if someone can't do exactly what everyone else can do or the way they can do it. I say we all partially participate in life all the time, and we're accepting of that. So for example, raise your hand if you cut your own hair. Yeah, raise your hand if you cook every single meal 365 days a year on your own without ever. We all partially participate. We do the things in life that we're capable of or that we have a desire to do, and those that we can't, we hire out, we borrow, we barter, all of those things. But for some reason when it comes to education, this is a hard thing for people to think that how is this meaningful if someone's in a science lesson in 4th grade and they're working on completing a circuit, and this student in particular needs someone else to help them maybe with fine motor skills to put it together, or maybe their concept of electricity might not be at the same level of other students. And so I'm really there, what my whole business, what my really life endeavor has been, is to really support teachers and support everyone to figure out how to make that work. And you had something you wanted to share?
I'm thinking back, not through the classroom or anything, but I was telling Cliff that while I was at West Islip, I used to do the shows. So I used to include so many of the students. And I'll tell you something, they shined. But like you just said, they did what they were able to do. Some of them were more severe than others. Some of them were just extremely anxious, and they had to be kind of, just thrown in a little bit and get used to the fray. But I found that theater, costuming, many of them worked behind the scenes. Some of them did activities that they surprised me with. And a lot of them came out of the show and learned a lot more confidence just through drama. And I've known many of them to be in the orchestra as well, taking instrument lessons.
And it's great.
And it was wonderful.
When you don't put limits on
confidence.
people, you just never know to what level they're going to be able to participate. And I've had so many experiences where it's just even shocked me that kids were able to rise to occasions where, I have one student with Down syndrome that I support who's incredibly shy, really shy, and but she always wanted to be the cheerleader, and she's in 8th grade now, and she's been on cheers. She's been doing it for 3 years, and it's really helped her come out of her shell, and she does such a beautiful job, for her, and for her to get out there in front of people, it's just amazing.
There was
You
a
want to
woman,
add something?
there was a woman that runs A Time for Play. I don't know if you know what Doreen Boomer.
No.
She runs, because I've worked with her on fashion shows at the
Okay.
mall. And she brought some students who were athletic, very athletic, but they also had a variety of disabilities with them. And I kind of watched and this and that and saw them get the hair and makeup, you know, the whole thing. And I thought, okay, I don't know what to expect of them. I'm like, let me tell you, they came out of their skin and did beyond all of my expectations. So there's places
Yeah.
to gain confidence. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
No, no, it's fine. I was just, the same type of example, my son just moved up to the high school and he'd been in chorus in junior high school and we were encouraged to have him continue. And of course, once you get up into the high school levels, it's competitive. I mean, you know, and he's in the general chorus and I met with the chorus teacher because I'm that parent that goes to open house and meets with all the electives teachers because I know what the special ed teachers are going to say. I want to know how they're doing in their general education electives. And she said, my son doesn't read music. He never learned. But she said he's gotten really good at knowing when to stop singing and listen for the part that he knows, and then he comes back in. And she said, and I'm okay with that because he's learning how to like pull himself out until he's ready to jump back in. And you don't even know it. She goes, and it's fine. She goes, it's fine that he doesn't sing every part. She said, because he's learning, and she said, for someone who's learning it by ear, he's actually doing very well. So like having that understanding and that flexibility where, you know, he's one of 2 or 3 or 4 kids out of the 80 that, you know, that need that, it's really, it's good to hear.
And it's great when you find professionals who can
Understand it,
yeah,
get it,
understand
and
that.
are able to work with it, yeah.
For sure. This one is just a comparison between what we call partial participation or people call inclusion versus much more of an old mainstreaming or readiness model. I can tell you that many of the students that I support, you know, if I waited for them to be ready, I'd be long off this earth before they'd be ready in a conventional way to be part of any of the things you're talking about. Anything about this that strike people or have questions about?
I just always dislike how the mainstream is like we're all supposed to be at a certain level at a certain time. Like I always struggled, and I struggled in college. I failed 2 classes in college, and it wasn't because I'm not smart. I just couldn't understand it. It was beyond me. This was when I was majoring in psychology, and I was like, it's not gonna happen. So I changed my major. That was my way of getting there.
Yes.
And I majored in something writing, which is totally different, but I could do that. And that's what I'm good at. Like I can't lie to myself, and I'm not a psychologist. I'll never be. But you know, it's just like everybody thinks it's like so clear. Like we're not all the same people, so why would it make sense?
Yeah, and just today I had an example of that of being in a school district. I was actually at it was a review, a CSE mid-year review for a little boy with Down syndrome, and he's included, and so just talking about like looking at readiness. And for him, they said they don't know why, but like he's really not following the developmental steps. So in other words, when it comes to reading, if you give him if you say to him the sound, he can identify the letter, but he can't do it in reverse. And they said if you look at any kind of reading profile, he should just be able to rotely identify the letters this way, but he knows it the other way. And so to me, it's just like, you know, if we just expect everyone to follow the same scope and sequence and expect them to follow the same developmental, you know, levels, it's not always true. And so inclusion is nothing about that.
Can we just go back?
Sure.
That one just bugs me because my son, you know, he tested with 135 plus IQ with attention issues because he had to keep stopping when there was noise and stuff. So, you know, he was too smart for Catholic school. You know, they were making him tutor other kids in his class who didn't get it. Then we put him into PAPMed and, you know, they put him in the inclusion class and they were very good. It's his social and his organizational skills. And then they tell me, well, you know, he plays and this year we have this teacher who's really good with his learning ability and he plays with clay or he does stuff. And the teacher said to me, right, I meet the teacher, he said, you know, I didn't think he was paying attention to anything said, but he heard everything and I will never doubt him again. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he can do whatever he has to do. But the gist of it with his 504 is he just gives him preferential seating. He came off the bus today, it's 20 degrees, he's got no coat. You know, like, and they'll say he's doing well and he's on honor roll for math, but how can he study for social studies and science if I don't have any notes and he doesn't bring any papers home?
Right, so they're not helping him with
They're
sort
the
of-
organization.
You're talking about like the executive functioning
And then they
skills.
just say, well, but you know, his grades are great, so we're putting him back in class, and you know, he's fourth, so I switched him half a year at third. I figured if we did it again, and the social worker at the school agreed with me, the psychologist too, and then the principal just threw him in this other class. She told me he'd have a teacher who understood him, because they had a student like him, and they used the special needs words, and you know, and then
All of those,
But
you
they're
know,
not all the same. Like,
no,
this is a
and then
person.
this was a person like Benjamin, and
Yeah,
blah blah
but
blah.
it's not Benjamin.
Then he comes home and he's like, I want Mr. Marston all summer. I want Mr. Marston. Mr. Marston lets them bring electronics to school. Now, electronics is a crutch for a kid with Asperger's and social problems, and here he is bringing electronics to school. So I said, you're not going to get that teacher. You're going to get a woman. You're going to get a woman. Lo and behold, he opens it and he gets Mr. Marston. So if I wrote to the principal, and she doesn't write back until the day before school starts and tells me take it up with the teacher what problems I have, and I'm like, well, nobody should have electronics because it's a school policy, but you know, okay, I'll take it up, and I don't want that teacher, which I'm not going to take up with him.
Yeah.
So if I switched him, now I automatically shut my son down.
Right.
So we're in that room, but you know, I don't know. Like when I read these kind of things, it just throws me off because he doesn't have any kind of learning ability. Like you gave him this, and he could read this back to you 3
Right,
months
but
from now. You didn't think he was reading it, and he like took it in, and he'll.
But that's okay, because I mean, inclusion is not just, doesn't necessarily mean just academics. You know, it can be in the areas you're talking about, social, emotional.
I mean, I
They
looked
just
for
as
3
much.
coats a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
I
they
just
just-
run around and go to like different places looking for 3 coats. It's 18 degrees out.
Cliff and I were talking before, they, you know, executive functioning skills just as much impact a human being as not being able to read or anything else. And actually, you know, there are skills that you need for life. So I would just encourage you to open that conversation with them. You know, there's great ones. If you email me, I can send you like a great executive functioning checklist that you could go through and check off all the things that your son cannot
'cause
do.
he's not
And
even
then you
bringing
can
home his
say,
planner
exactly,
every day
and then you can
still.
present it to the teachers and say, these are the things my son needs to work on. So I don't want to by any means say to you that it's really just about including students who have academic
So if he-
differences. It's really
Well,
any.
now, if you went in the inclusion class, and she said, well, there's only so much room. But, you know, I have a friend whose daughter's in there who doesn't want her in there, and she's general ed. So, like, why can't he be one of the gen ed students in that class? Like, I don't understand, like,
Yeah.
if it's the numbers.
Right, because it's not, you know, when somebody doesn't have an IEP.
Yeah,
it's
he only
just
has a
wherever they fall.
504.
Yeah, so I will definitely, if you want to email me, I'll be happy to do that. Yes?
No, I was gonna say part of your 504, if you wanted, you could put on that he has secondary textbooks at home.
I did. You know what the principal told me in the meeting? They don't know if they can accommodate me with that because there are kids in the school that don't actually have textbooks.
So then you should get an IEP, so you have to follow government choice.
Yeah.
They said there's some students in here that don't even have textbooks, so they
Oh,
couldn't.
that's another shame.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you might need to go the route of getting more support for him in those areas. So this one, which is a quote from actually a long time ago now, in 1992, where the ruling was where parents of their son sued and won. It was a student who has Down syndrome, and now she's probably a grown-up for sure, but sued, and this was the ruling of that judge, which is inclusion is a right, not a privilege for a select few. So when I go in and work with schools and work with teachers, we talk about all the different components of really making it work for any student, and we know differentiation or differentiated instruction is really an important piece, which is really matching all different learners, whether they're the most gifted, quote unquote gifted student, to the student who struggles the most academically, and everywhere in between to make sure that everyone's getting their needs met. And then we talk about accommodations, which some people have touched on already, but it could be accommodations, which I call the how. So we're not really changing what they're learning, but just how they're learning it, so make it accessible. So you could be changing a classroom environment, you could be changing testing, you can be giving testing accommodations. Accommodations can, run the gamut. Anybody have anything to say about accommodations, or any questions?
I have something to say about accommodations.
Sure.
A lot of times accommodations are things that people take for granted. They don't realize it's an accommodation. So you have to really be able to articulate you know, what it is your need is. You know, like for example, I come at 8 o'clock in the morning. The reason is because if I came in at 9 when everybody was there, I would be so distracted, you know? So I got a new boss and she's like, why are you starting at 8 o'clock in the morning? I said, well, it was an accommodation. She goes, well, you know, so I had to explain to her that I come in because it's an accommodation, because I can function better having time alone myself. So a lot of people take that for granted, that you can come in at 9 o'clock and, you know, so accommodations really have to be articulated, you know, and people have to understand, you know, why you need it. I was very fortunate I had a boss that got it, so I never had a problem getting accommodations, but now they think that it's normal, that they don't realize they're getting accommodations, so it's really cool.
And that's a perfect example. So if you, in order for you to do your job, it's not that we're changing your job, but making an accommodation makes that job possible for you.
Right.
Might not be what somebody else needs, and that's what it's about, whether it's a school environment or anything else. Yes?
I was just going to say, what you were saying, be as specific as possible. Not just, you know, like testing modifications. What exactly do you want? Is having the test read. My son sat through a Regents, the teacher read the test out loud to the whole class. The test is being read, that's the accommodation. No, he needed to be read one-on-one because somebody else was yelling out answers. So, you know, like, this is the situation, so you really need to be specific.
You do, and you're right. And the only way to make sure that these things happen is to make sure that they're in the IEP and it's ironclad, and you can count on that, because that's what you have moving forward as your legal document to ensure that that happens. And if it's not happening, you know, that's what you can use definitely to make sure that that happens. Yes.
Getting back to you a little bit, really, if things are like that, you're not getting the textbook, you know, and no one else is helping you in that school, not even, I go straight to the school board, which I have done in the early 70s before they were laws. Go straight to the school board, because that's completely unacceptable. You've got to go further. So I would just say to you, I would try going to your sister chair. You know, you exhausted your teacher, you're this, you're that, and it's regular. You got to go above and beyond.
Yeah, I always feel like I don't know which I guess is what you're saying, like what does he deserve with his diagnosis? You know, like they're like, oh, he has Asperger's, but no, he has ADHD and ODD. You know what I mean? Like, and he has severe anxiety. So when he comes home without his book, he's up at night not falling asleep because he's worried that he didn't have his book to do his homework. And then in the morning, he doesn't want to get on the bus. And then I've had the security guard lift him up and carry him up the stairs to school because he's so worried about going into school. Because he's anxious that he didn't bring his books. And meanwhile, the teacher will say, like, yeah, but it's not a big deal. If you didn't do it, you know, you could do it later. I'm like, but how big of it, like I said to him today, does your teacher say to you, when you leave the classroom, does everybody have their coats? I mean, it's 18 degrees out. Like, I mean, if I was a teacher, which I'm 7 to 12 certified, if they're leaving and you look and there's coats there, I mean, I do Girl Scouts, I do religion, if their coats and their books are there, the last thing I say is get your books, get your coats. Like, I don't think that this is like a really hard thing to say to them, you know?
It's really even bigger than that. It's really teaching him like strategies that he needs for life, because obviously this is part of who he is.
You know.
So like, does he need a reminder posted on his desk or something to remind him? Does he need something to tell him like which books? Does he need to take a picture of?
You know, she puts her coat on at 7:40. It's 8:40. She's in her coat. She wants no part of Benjamin leaving the house.
Right.
You know, she's like, I'm going to the corner, and you know, Benjamin's got one shoe on. He's looking for the other shoe. Then the cat goes by. He's picking up the cat. You know, and I'm like, he must do this during school. Like, you can't. You know, we go through.
But unfortunately, what you said is so totally true. We find so often is that because it doesn't seem to impact his academics.
But you know what it is impacting now, and he was really, really mad about, is the behaviors on the report card.
Right.
So now his behaviors, because, you know, we always just called him quirky, and apparently it comes out 8 to 12, which is exactly when the social behavioral part came out. And now the report cards are going down, like the needs improvement part, and we come home, and my husband says to my daughter, oh, Paige, you did great, you got an O, you know, for outstanding, and this and that, and he's like, great, my report card's like slap in the face, and I have no O's, and we're like, Benjamin, you did wonderful, like you did great, and he just had to keep going, and my husband, or anybody who knows him knows he's like, Mela, my husband was like, oh my God, like stop. you know, and it's bothering him, you know, and he will lay in bed at night bothered by this.
Feel free to email me and we can definitely talk about sort of next steps.
You know,
and
I could just
help you
say,
any way
some
I can.
school districts, I know the one that I go in and sub for the last couple of years, they've gotten onto this Google Chrome. They all, it was, it was a grant, they got a grant for all, and they all have their little individualized little computers. They carry them around all the time. If a teacher is homesick or something, I've seen this happen when I go in and sub, they will email the kids right there in the classroom, change the assignment, and give certain kids different assignments to do. So then Google, it's a nice little compact. Somebody wrote a grant, got a lot of money, and they have them at the middle school.
You know,
Yeah, you have a lot of
one of the
students.
things I suggest you do, because like I'm entitled to assistive technology, right? But because I'm an adult, they consider assistive technology things that are physical, you know what I mean, like a wheelchair or a spoon. They don't get it that technology is an assistive technology. And I'm jealous because the elementary schools actually offer better, so I would contact your school, they have an assistive technology expert. I would definitely speak with that person and they can get strategies. And he's entitled, you know, not entitled, that's a bad word, but he has the right to get any technology he needs to do better in school. So I would really suggest you look into that too.
Yeah, definitely, there's a lot of avenues to go,
Yeah.
for sure. And then this last one, the last is really where I spend a lot of time, which hopefully we can touch on also for your son, is making modifications. And modifications aren't always about an academic need, especially when we talk about the last one. And you're going to have a couple of minutes to work together to use this paradigm, but we'll skip over this. So this is basically a paradigm that I created to explain or help people understand modifications, because it's such, for a lot of people, it's just such a generic word, and people say, like, you know, we're making modifications, and what does that really mean? So I've broken it down into 3 different types of modifications. The first one I call a TQ modification, which stands for time or quantity. So a student who might need a time or quantity modification would be someone who completely understands the concept, the topic, just like their peers, but they just need more time to do it, or they need less to do. And so I look at myself, who's not a secondary math person. If you said, Diane, I know math, you know, at the high school level is really hard for you, so in calculus, instead of doing 20 problems, you just do 10, that would not help me at all, because I can't do it. And if you said, you know what, we'll give you 3 years to do it, unless you put me in front of a really great computer, I wouldn't be any better off. So a TQ modification for me, when it comes to secondary math, is not the right modification. So then we move on to what I call a leveled modification, which is still about math, but we bring it down to a level in which that I can be successful or that I need to learn at. And so there's some examples there in the bubbles, so I can get some of the concept. I may not be able to write a paragraph, but I can write a sentence. I can work on problems with numbers that are less than 10 while you work on with problems greater than 10. So if a student's working on division, we want them to understand division. We can definitely look at the numbers that they're using, and we can give them smaller numbers to use than their peers, but they're still learning division. And but then the last one, which really applies to your son, is really what we call an out-of-area modification. And that's where we take a goal or a skill that a student needs to work on from a completely different area in which they're learning. So it's not, so it could be, for your son, it could be a social emotional goal, or it could be an interactional goal with a peer. So it might be working on something like that within whatever they're teaching. So if he's in the middle of social studies, but we know that he has difficulty, again, I don't know him, but maybe he has difficulty not monopolizing a conversation when he's working in a peer group. So maybe we're working on supporting him to be able to listen to peers and take turns with peers as far as conversations. You know, maybe because of his executive functioning difficulties, he has a hard time organizing it. So maybe when we're working with him, we're not as concerned because we know that he gets the concepts, but we're more concerned about helping him organize. If he has a big project, let's say a science fair project, we're going to work on with him his organizational skills. So we're going to embed something like that in whatever he's doing. And that's what it sounds like your son needs. He needs to have those things embedded because he doesn't need the support with the academics. He needs the support with the other things, but we need to be working on those all day long.
And see, that's what scares me, because PatMed is a fantastic district, but we've the whole child that we're doing, and the extra, we have double recess, and we have yoga, and we have all this stuff, but we have very minimal homework. And he actually had a questionnaire out, and half of the district wanted no homework in the elementary school. And as much as I hate homework, I'm like, this kid is in 4th grade, like, he's not gonna know how to do any homework. Like, he can't, you know, like, we need to get there before you get to middle school.
But I think, you know, when we talk about out of area modifications, that's really what
Yeah.
needs to be happening for him all day. These are just questions that are in your packet to help you if you struggle with what type of modification might be appropriate. These are questions to ask yourself. And then I want you to play around with it for a couple of minutes. So you can work with this person next to you. You have 2 options. Because we weren't sure who was going to be coming, if people would be working with more school-age kids, or some people might be coming who are talking more about adults. So the first one gives you an example of a lesson and each type of modification that I just went over quickly. And again, I don't expect you to learn all of this in 2 seconds. I spend like a week, you know, doing workshops on how to do this with people. So just play around with it a little bit. So there's an example for you, and then together with somebody next to you, come up with some sort of lesson, something that a whole class is learning, and maybe in a type of modification, an example of a modification under each one. And then the last sheet you have there is more of a work for an older student that actually I supported, who was doing some work out in Old Navy, actually. So this was actually some of the modifications that we provided. So make a choice between you and your partner. Pick one to work on. I'm here, so I'll be walking around. If you have questions, you get stuck. So your job is to read the one on the left and create your own on the right. Okay? I'll give you just a couple of minutes to get as much done as you can.
I think that's quite lucky to find out the I can't imagine.
I'm surprised you didn't even do
So we're supposed to take what happened over here, buy it?
No, we're supposed to come up with our own lesson example, and then we're also doing different modifications, which is these.
I know, I said that.
What's your name, Carrie?
I'm focusing through that.
I know. Something that my couple of
He's
and her 3rd grade inclusion, the rest of the district does revisions, they do modules. So the language of the modules kind of trips
now we
her
have to
up,
work on writing.
and that's where all the meltdowns happen. So right now she's doing like, multiplication and division, she can't commit because it's from memory. So a way that I modify it, like if I were to do a lesson, like tonight, 6 times tables. Together we listed the multiple 6, so they were down in a column, and then she was able to solve.
Okay, yeah, because the more I learn, I did advertising and marketing. That's okay. I did advertising and marketing. That's how I actually met my
So I
husband.
guess maybe.
And we did advertise. He did Baywatch domestically, and I did Baywatch overseas. So that's how we met. And when I moved back out, I moved out here because I was coming up with my son. I went to school and I got certified social studies. And now I'm kind of, I never taught though, because I did it when my son was 6 to 9 months. And then when he was in school, my daughter went in, so some of these problems started coming up. So I never played that lesson. But I'm kind of even thinking too of what I should do with my degree. Right, what could I do? Because I feel like
The way the health teacher did it.
No, I'm sorry, health
I
would be
just feel like
that,
just
just general class.
It's an elective, yes, it's 7th grade elective. She's not in
trying to figure out like what I could do
the
to help
12
somebody,
health.
you know, like me.
So they offer like a 12 health.
Yeah, well, the health teacher.
I gotta like do something, you know?
Self-contained kids who can't.
So just take about 1 more minute, just get through what you can.
Regular elective class.
Okay.
So we always push them into regular electives, so the
Okay.
health teacher partnered with her teacher.
Okay.
And they modified the same thing with the test. The kids have 100 question tests, my daughter had 25.
Okay.
So the sassy group, yeah. All of them.
And it was all homework, because they made these modifications. So like the same thing with the work.
Yeah.
Her comprehension level obviously is a couple of grades below. Where she should be, so they just modified the work to her reading level, but it's the same topic and the same
But they changed the language physically of the text.
Right. Well,
So she's
they
able to
changed-
read it?
They changed it to her comprehension level.
Okay.
So she would be able to understand it, and, yeah, and then they scaled it to West London, so she would, you know, quarter or
Yeah.
would be able to type of content. And then, the same thing, like it was more sales, so, you know, they had to do this whole thing about me.
So does anyone have anything that they would be willing to share?
Putting together PowerPoint.
With the whole group?
Piecing and cutting pictures.
Something that they either came up with or that they talked about in the group about modifications?
Hers might not have as much content in terms of text and more. So it was.
Who has something to share?
It was scaled more to me.
I don't know if it's really fine with this. For homework, my son always gets, he has to write his words 3 times each.
Okay.
And there's 10 words, and every Monday we fight about writing the words, and he doesn't want to do it, he's tired of it. So this week I I modified it to make it more entertaining. I said, you know what we're going to do? I said, we're going to do it in different colored pencils. And he's like, okay. And he took to it, and he loved it. So every word, he wrote his word 3 times each, but he got to pick a colored pencil and he did it.
Right, and that's great, and for me, that's like more of an accommodation because he's still doing what he needs to do. He's still doing 3 times each. It's not like you're giving him less words. It's not like you're telling him only write it 2 times. You're just making it a little bit, you're adding something, you're giving him some choice in that, so that's great. Sometimes that's all somebody needs, something as simple as that, that's great. Someone else have something?
Not that it's got to do with this, but I know the district that I do some work for. They're into using very specialized programs, and they believe that using these programs is going to have the children read. But what the children don't understand is that just saying a word is not reading. So one of the, being a reading specialist and all of that business, I said, you know, I know we're doing this program, I know you're into it, and you just have to do it. But on the other side of the coin, if you're stuck and you're reading, so just keep going on. Just keep going on. You may either, one of 2 things, you may figure out what the word is, even though you can't say it, but you know what it means. Or you can put something there that makes some sense to you. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't have to be rigid, which is what some of these programs do. Everything is rigid. That's not what it's about. I would like to see you gain as many experiences as you can, every which way from A to Z. That will help you more than anything else that you ever do in becoming a good reader. And some of them, they stop me in the hall now and I go, you know, that worked for me.
That's great.
But do what they want you to do because you got to get through that. They want you to know. I want you to
Real
know
life.
that the end result is you
Yes.
have to enjoy and understand what's in front of you, not just like that. I don't care if you can't say it. When you just go through it, you will say that word and not think anything about it.
And again, it's really just about teaching strategies for life, like we were just talking about your son. It's like you really need that because outside of that program, outside of that classroom, you don't want your son walking around the rest of his life in 18-degree weather without a coat or not being able to organize himself enough to get through a job or whatever task it is. And so all those things are really important things.
When my son was in overseas, or whatever the heck he was in the early days, he had a difficult time passing the RCT English, and they would tell me, oh, he's never going to pass that. I said, that is the last thing you ever tell me. So I worked with him, and then many nights we went at it, and I said, well, when you're ready, do it. But I said, you know, Don, you are too rigid in what you do. You're too straight. You got to learn to lie a little bit, okay? So even though you don't actually believe some of the things you're saying in these essays,
Just write them.
put it in. You have my permission to lie once in a while. And he came out with an 85 on that RCT. Well, they were like, oh. I said, well,
Prove them wrong, that's for sure.
yeah, you gotta do what works for your kid.
Yeah.
You know your kid, right? So you gotta do what
Certainly the
works.
best, better than anybody else.
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
And so we need 10 because it's 7. I have examples here. I had brought, there's 2 sets of them. They're identical. But if you want to look at just some modifications or visual supports for students, as you're walking out, feel free if you want to take pictures of them. If you have any further questions about your individual situations, do not hesitate. You have my contact information. I talk to parents, educators all the time, so I have no problem with that whatsoever. Anybody have any last questions or anything that they want to ask?
I just have a quick one. I have a
Sure.
quick one. How is this different than universal learning? Or is that like kind of the same?
Universal design for learning?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, say it
It's
again.
like an offshoot of these apps.
Yeah, and modifications are more IEP driven, where universal design for learning is for a whole class.
Yeah.
You know, that's for everyone, just like differentiation is really part of what you need to be doing for everyone, as opposed to modifications which are specific for students.
We were just having that
Specific
conversation, we were doing that exercise, we would walk the hallway, and what does this make you think, and what does it make you question? These strategies work for everybody, not just special needs kids. And we all learn differently. So, you know, diversifying how you teach and your methods that you use and your strategies benefits everybody, not just the kids that need this more intense learning
100%.
So it makes sense to just try and incorporate it in a general education inclusive environment versus just using these strategies in the special ed environment.
Right, so if you look at the museum walk, some of that had a visual there and also had words. If you were someone who had difficulty reading or weren't that interested in reading, you might get something out of that visual that somebody who is more linguistic and might just be looking at the words and reading that would get out of it. But you can still get something out of it that's related to it. So yes,
They're all
that's what
learning sign
I...
language now, so,
Diane?
Yes,
If I could
yes.
just say one thing, first of all, thank you, a huge thank you to Marlene and Cliff for putting this together. You guys are incredible. You do so much for the people of this community. So, on behalf of the town, thank you very much, and also thank you to everyone else who showed here tonight, for your participation. Because without all of you, obviously, we can't, do what it is that we try to do here.
I'd be very lonely. I'd be talking to myself.
Exactly. We would have sat with you.
Yeah,
But-
I so appreciate that.
And Diane, to you, and also to our video staff, thank you very much.
Yes.
And Diane, to you, I want to thank you for bringing this program to our community and to the folks that are here tonight. And on behalf of the town, I'd like to present you with Marlene and Cliff. If you join me over here,
Oh my goodness.
you know what? Why don't you come over here?
$1,000 check.
Yeah, that-
It's better.
Step right over here.
So fancy.
I know.
We just want to present you the certificate of appreciation. Thank you for what it is that you do, your commitment and your dedication to special education and disabilities. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations.
I'm so honored.
We're just gonna take a picture.
Sure.
One more. Great, thank you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Please share with your family
Awesome.
and friends that we're around. This is a big task force. We're best kept secret. And, we want to make sure that everybody knows we're around, and we're looking to find out what people want so we can provide it. So thanks so much.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Great job as always.
If you have questions, I'm here.
Thanks,
I'm
Terry.
packing up. Anybody wants to stop by? There's extra packets all around. I don't need to bring them home with me. So if anybody wants to grab extra.